let's show you the most traded players based on the moves that you made on Tuesday night. Remember, the trade deadline in most leagues is coming rapidly, so make your moves now before you miss out. You want to solidify your roster for a playoff run, or maybe start to look ahead in some keeper leagues, some dynasty leagues, but make your trades as soon as you possibly can before the trade deadline expires. Elijah Mitchell, the most traded player, Adam. Do you think people are selling high on him, buying low on him? We just don't know what's going to happen with Jeff Wilson moving forward. Again, this team, if they do fall out of playoff contention, do they give Trey Sermon some more work? Where are you at with Elijah Mitchell rest of the season?
I suspect people are afraid and they are selling high. They might see the box score that he only had 8 carries against Arizona. He did have 5 catches, but we shouldn't expect that. He had 8 carries, but the running backs had just 9 total. So he is, at least in week 9, he was absolutely the clear-cut #1 guy. And that was with him missing practice and having banged up ribs. So I don't see an indication that they're going to split the work in any significant way. I would be willing to buy low. I wouldn't be willing to buy high. You know what I mean? I think Jeff Wilson still lingers a little bit. If the price tag is pretty low, then I think you take a shot on Mitchell. But I am a little bit worried about the offense in general. Look, his worst game, his most uninvolved game, was the one game that Trey Lance started. Lance, I think, had 16 carries in that game. If they turn to Lance, I do think it might actually hurt Mitchell too. So there are some variables working against him. You might want to see what you can get, but I still think for the immediate future, he is the starting running back for the 49ers, and that is a very good thing.
Heath, I want to ask you about Antonio Gibson because I don't know if we really need to touch on Damian Harris, just not knowing what his status is. So clearly, fantasy managers may be selling or maybe buying cheap, so we just don't know the status of Harris moving forward. But Gibson, we do know. He's expected to play in Week 10. A tough matchup against Tampa Bay. He's been their lead running back for the majority of the season, but the last time we saw him, he was splitting time with Jared Patterson. So is this a good opportunity, though, to buy low, knowing that he's probably going to struggle against the Bucs? His value is probably never going to be lower than it is right now.
We've just seen, I hope not, but I kind of thought that a couple weeks ago, and we've just seen his snap share just continually go down ever since they announced this injury. And I just don't know what the hope is. I've not heard any optimism that this is something that might heal mid-season and be okay later in the year. If it was a case like that, then yeah, I'd be all for it. But I don't know that they're giving it a chance to heal right now. I'm pretty concerned that Gibson is just a borderline flex most of the year.
All right, I would just say, like, if you can give away nothing and get him just because some frustrated fantasy manager, it's worth taking the chance on, because if he does get back to the level that we saw early this year, certainly what we saw last year, you're going to be thrilled about that. And maybe the offense looks better when Ryan Fitzpatrick is back, if and when that does happen at some point this season. Adam, we saw Travis Kelce's name on this list. How much do you have to give up to get Travis Kelce? I mean, like, you're going to give up half your roster? How's the trade partner work to get Travis Kelce?
Well, I'll tell you, someone emailed the fantasy football account and said they traded Myles Gaskin for Travis Kelce.
Come on.
So you should have to give up more than that. By the way, I think trading Myles Gaskin for Antonio Gibson would be a really good risk to take. Sure. But back to Kelce, I still value him as a surefire first-round pick. So I don't know what you have to give up for him, but if I am redrafting again today, I value him as a top 12 overall player. So I am not accepting anything less than a top 12 overall player for Kelce. If I were trading Kelce, I would want, say, Dallas Goedert, who I think is a good buy low, and a must-start running back or a must-start wide receiver, something like that. But I think Kelce deserves a very high price tag. Even if Mahomes struggles, Kelce's still going to be really good. Probably the favorite to be the #1 tight end going forward, even if Mahomes does not get all the way back on track. So do not give away Kelce for cheap, and be prepared to pay up for Kelce if you want him.
You agree with that? If we were redrafting today, that Kelce's still a top 12 pick?
No, I think he's probably a top 24 pick. He's a second-round pick. He hasn't fallen as far as the perception seems to in some places, but I don't think he'd be a top 12 pick.
Adam, why are you still valuing him so high? Just because he's better at his position than everybody else? Because it seems like if you were to draft, I don't know, one of these, Joe Mixon, let's say, for example, back-end round 1 pick. I don't want to say Najee Harris because he'd be going higher, or Jonathan Taylor would be going higher, but the guys that were in the back end of the first round. So let's just say Joe Mixon. Would you feel more comfortable with Joe Mixon and a Dallas Goedert, or would you feel more comfortable with Travis Kelce and a Michael Carter?
I definitely take Mixon and Goddard. I think that's exactly the type of trade you should try to make, because I like Goddard, like I said, and I think Mixon has earned the right to be a first-round pick at this point, whereas he was an early second, mid-second round pick in a lot of drafts. But look, maybe if I did the exercise, I could think of 12 players that I like better than Kelce, but I still value him as a total stud. And I think tight end is still tight end, right? I mean, Mark Andrews has 3 touchdowns this year. I expect him to have a better touchdown rate, but he's been good. He hasn't been incredible. Darren Waller's been really disappointing for about a 5-week stretch before he bounced back last week and should have had an even better game. Kyle Pitts 2 huge games, but he's been pretty up and down. I still think Kelce has a chance to be a mega difference maker at the position, and I just have faith that the Chiefs are going to be able to figure this out. And Kelce, look, we had this conversation 3 weeks ago. He might be a top 5 pick. So I think in that sense, you might be buying a little bit low on him. I still think he's borderline top 12.
I mean, look, for every Travis Kelce, there's a Dan Arnold and a Pat Freiermuth. So, you just want to take that into consideration when you're talking about the tight end position. All right, we're going to take a break right now. When we come back and get to your questions, we'll tease you with one going into the break here for Ask FFT. Here we go. Marky Mark wants to know, need a PPR flex between Russell Gage, Jarvis Landry, and Mike Williams. Has Mike Williams fallen that far? We'll give you that answer next, and more of your Ask FFT questions coming up after the break.